Greetings all, Dr. X here. So welcome to an introduction to cultural studies. In this video, you'll get an opportunity to learn more about foundational key concepts that I'll use throughout the semester. So let's get started. Let's begin our cultural studies journey by first defining what culture is. So culture is a way of life shared by a group of people. Now, that shared way of life includes ideas and things that are passed down from one generation to the next in a society. Now, those things can be language, they can be artifacts. I'll talk more about that when I talk about material culture versus non-material culture. But for the purposes of this course, culture when I talk about culture, it is the way of life shared by any given group of people. Now, let me share with you a couple of characteristics of culture. First of all, remember that all people are immersed in one or more cultures. In other words, you can be part of a macro culture, a larger aspect of culture, a societal level of culture, but then you may be part of a micro level of culture, like being part of a subculture. Just remember that all people are immersed at any given time in one or more cultures. So what are those characteristics of culture to remember as you begin your studies of culture this semester? First of all, remember that it evolves over time and it is adaptive. In other words, culture is always over time evolving and it adapts depending on different impacts that come from external forces, right? So culture, one, it evolves over time and it's adaptive. Secondly, the creation of culture is ongoing and it's cumulative. So culture doesn't end at one point and then forget everything that was part of the culture and pick up at another point. For the purposes of this course, we're talking about those cultures that are created and ongoing and cumulative. So culture becomes it's flexible, it changes, it can change over time. And finally, culture separates human beings from other animals. Okay, so I shared with you some of the characteristics of culture. Now let me talk specifically about components of culture. So the first component is material culture. Material culture are the artifacts of life. In other words, material culture includes all of the objects you can see or touch, all of the artifacts of a group of people. Material culture includes all human-made objects, from local community of the micro level origin to macro level, like corporations who try to establish trends of fashion and style with global appeal. Material culture drives globalization in a lot of respects. Non-material culture, on the other hand, are those beliefs, values, rules, and even language. Non-material culture includes the thoughts, language, feelings, beliefs, values, and attitudes that make up much of our culture. Values, then, are those shared judgments about what is desirable and undesirable. Values are about right and wrong, good and bad. They express the basic ideals of any group of people. Where beliefs, on the other hand, is taking ideas, it's taking those ideas we hold about life, about the way society works, and about where we fit in the world. Now, values and beliefs get expressed in a couple of forms, two forms in particular. There is ideal culture, but then there's real culture. So ideal culture consists of practices, beliefs, and values regarded as most desirable in society, and they are consciously taught to our children. So the ideal culture is the culture, those practices, beliefs, and values that we hold most desirable, and then we teach those down to our kids. But then there's real culture, and what is real culture? Well, it's the way things in society are actually done. So we always have the ideal, like any other aspect of our lives, we have these ideals of what our life could look like, but then there's the reality of what it really does look like. The same is true about culture. There are ideal aspirations or aspects, and then the reality may be very different from what our ideal is. We now have an understanding of non-material culture. Well, what arises out of non-material culture is the next component of culture we'll call norms. Norms are rules of behavior that are shared by members of a society, and they're rooted in the value system of that society. So rules include folkways, mores, taboos, laws, and sanctions. Folkways are customs and usually desirable behaviors. Now, these, though, are not strictly enforced. Those are folkways. Mores are norms that most people observe because they have great moral significance in the society. And then taboos are the strongest form of mores and concern actions considered unthinkable or unspeakable in the culture. So as you go through the readings this week, you'll see very specific examples of folkways, mores, and taboos. What also arises as norms are laws. So laws are norms formally encoded by those holding political power in the society. Now, if you violate one of the laws, you can deal with a sanction. Sanctions come in the form of formal sanctions and informal sanctions. So a sanction is a reinforced norm that either comes through rewards or penalties. Formal sanctions are those rewards or penalties that are conferred on you by recognized officials, those people with power. An informal sanction is an unofficial reward or punishment, such as smiles, frowns. They can be verbal or nonverbal. Okay, so remember, norms come in spoken formats, written, nonverbal, or verbal language. Now that you understand what culture is, what those cultural characteristics are, what the components of culture are, I want to talk with you quickly about what is cultural studies. Cultural studies is an interdisciplinary field of study that includes other fields like anthropology, history, humanities, political science, psychology, racial and ethnic studies, sociology, and women's studies. So this semester, we will be pulling information from all of these areas as we conduct our own studies of culture. I'll end this week's lecture with the following. Cultural studies is an opportunity for all of us to seek to understand the characteristics and components of human culture. This semester, you'll get an opportunity to learn about cultures that are maybe your culture, and they're more than likely cultures of other people. What I hope you'll do is be open and receptive to what you learn about other cultures, and also use this as an opportunity to learn more about your culture. Okay, that's it for this week's lecture. If you have any questions, don't forget, go ahead and post those in Ask Dr. X, or you can post them in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching, and have a terrific week.